1. District attorneys encourage prosecutors when seeking a plea deal to ensure they take into account race. The days of Lady Justice wearing a blindfold seem to be on the decline. But race was not a factor in the plummet in draft stock of Colorado quarterback, son of Deion Sanders, Shedeur Sanders. We break that all down with Tomi Lahren. 2, Bill Belichick has a 24-year-old girlfriend who seems to be running the show. I don't think I wanted this guy coaching my team in the NFL. 3, Kelsey Grammer, legend, sitcom, television, comedian, legend, today with us talking about his love for America. It is the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel and the Fox News Facebook page. Terrestrial radio, 3 dozen stations from coast to coast, but always on demand by subscribing at Apple or on Spotify. We got the gang back together. We've got Two-A-Days Dan, Young Establishment James, and Tinfoil Pat. What an exciting weekend it was in sports. What an exciting weekend it was for the NFL draft. And it came with controversy. It came with drama. It came with the media hype that has been around for the better part of a year and a half. The drama of the Colorado Buffaloes, the celebrity star of Deion Sanders, and the draft status of his son, Shedeur Sanders. Over the weekend, everyone lost their mind. Everyone once again decided it was a moment to indict the very racist bones of America. But we're going to get into that a little bit later here in the show. But speaking of people who have lost their minds, sorry, young James, your legend is not running the show. Just a stunning interview on CBS Sunday morning.
Maybe it was Brady.
A stunning interview with Bill Belichick and his new 24-year-old girlfriend, Jordan Hudson, who has him all over Instagram.
It's younger than me.
Have a little taste of CBS Sunday Morning featuring Bill Belichick.
You joined InstaFace, as you put it. I love that. There's some great pictures of you and Jordan where you're a fisherman and she's a mermaid. It's charming. It's a different side of you. What's the reaction been like?
What's it been like?
To have these different sort of photos. There's another one where you're doing, I know you're not into meditation or yoga or Pilates. You're balancing Jordan on your feet and she's doing kind of the Titanic pose.
Yeah, so I'm on some of those social media platforms, but I honestly don't follow them.
What is going on? He's sending up smoke signals. Belichick, blink. Blink if you're okay. Give us 2 blinks if you need to be absconded away from whatever's going on in your life. This girlfriend, 24-year-old Jordan Hudson, pulled him out, or she didn't pull him out. She monitored the interview. She interjected herself. I don't think in all of my years of doing this, I've ever had someone off to the side go, nope, we're not doing that.
No producer?
I don't think I've ever had that.
No producers stopped an interview?
I don't think so,
or like
man.
Handler?
I'm just trying to think off the top of my head if it's ever happened, and I don't think it ever has.
It's like Kamala with Charlemagne the God that happened.
It's so embarrassing. It's embarrassing as it is. It's embarrassing if it's your girlfriend. It's more embarrassing if it's your 24-year-old girlfriend and you're 70 years old. And there's also, it's even more embarrassing because Bill Belichick has jumped the shark. He's wearing this navy sweatshirt, ratted up, tatted up, holes in the sweatshirt. Don't sell me James on. That's always been his look. It's like he's going over the top, man. He's jumped the shark.
Yeah, it's brutal.
I don't mind an old sweatshirt, but yeah, the hole was too much.
Dude, for a national interview?
That's his thing, though.
Like
he did that his entire career in New England.
Nothing about the
cut off
past.
sleeves.
What's going on with your thing?
What?
What's going on with your thing, Two-A-Days?
My
What are you doing?
haircut?
Yeah.
I went with the Tom Hardy Mobland haircut.
I mean, Patrick gives up the alt-right haircut. Dan comes in and saves the day. Here we go.
It is a little
gosh.
it is a little high and tight, isn't it?
I mean, that thing is that skin, man.
Yeah,
that's skin.
That's a skin fade.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Oh, it's got an official name, the skin fade.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
It looks good.
Thanks.
Looks good.
Thanks.
Yeah. Turn to the camera. Look straight on at me. Let me see. I don't want just the profile shot.
Just did just broke the fourth wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
It's high and tight.
something. It's not a ratted up T-shirt, sweatshirt. It's not a 24-year-old girlfriend running your life, but it's something. And we got to figure out what's going on with Bill Belichick. That and what's going on with Shedeur Sanders coming up in just a moment here on the Will Cain Show. But let's get to it with story number one. Tomi Lahren is the host of Tomi Lahren is Fearless at Outkick.com. It kicks off right after the Will Cain Show here at 1 o'clock Eastern Time at FoxNews.com as well. And she joins us now. What's up, Tomi?
Well, I'm so happy that you have me on to discuss the sports news of the day. I know that I was your first choice for this, and I am honored to dazzle you with my sports expertise, particularly in the area of the NFL draft. You know that I'm obviously an expert in this area, so you called the right person.
It's not even a sports story. I'm not worried. So the political audience doesn't need to run screaming, oh, no. Hey, Tomi, have you ever heard the formula of the appropriate age to date? Okay, Bill Belichick is 70, and his girlfriend is 24. He's blown the algorithm out of the water here, okay? He's far coloring outside the lines. But have you not talked about this before as well? What are the lines of dating?
Listen, I think the lines are a little blurry. I'm glad that you started with this story because this actually is within my wheelhouse, you know, dating and pop culture, Instagram, the Instaface, that actually is my arena. So let's kick off with that. Okay. First of all, I don't want to be mean here. I'm trying not to be a mean girl. But when I watched that interview and I saw her there, I thought that's a hard 24. She looks a little older than 24. So take that, you know, how you will. Maybe she's wise beyond her years. I think she looks a little older than 24. I would have pegged her maybe at 34 or 35. It's still a giant age gap, though. And I think how uncomfortable she was when it got brought up, like, how did you meet? Okay, you're just making people speculate more now because your reaction to the question is the story now.
Yeah. So I was going to talk about this a little bit later in the program, but I can't think of anybody better to talk about it with than Tomi Lahren. So let's go ahead and roll the tape on this moment where she interrupts the CBS interview with Bill Belichick. Here is the star, Jordan Hudson.
Jordan was a constant presence during our interview.
You have Jordan right over there. Everybody in the world seems to be following this relationship. They've got an opinion about your private life. It's got nothing to do with them, but they're invested in it. How do you deal with that?
Never been too worried about what everybody else thinks. Just try to do what I feel like is best for me and what's right.
How did you guys meet?
Not talking about this.
No?
No.
It's a topic neither one of them is comfortable commenting on, though Hudson has recently posted about it on Instagram.
There we go. She interrupts the interview, says we're not talking about this. Now, I'll answer my own question to you, Tomi, by the way. The lines are this. Men are allowed to date half plus 7 of their age. I thought you and I had discussed this. So I just turned 50. Tomi sent me a nice birthday message. That would be were I to ever get divorced, and I'm not going to get divorced. But for whatever reason, I was back in the dating pool. That would put my floor at 32. I could date a 33, 34-year-old, but I'm outside the lines if I'm going to 28. That puts Belichick's number, because he's 70, right? So that puts his number at 42. And he's down here fishing in the 24-year-old pond. Far outside the lines, Tomi.
Far outside the lines. And I think it's actually the relationship itself and the way that they carry themselves that gives us mostly the ick there. And it's the Instagram post. It looks like a father-daughter thing. And I think everyone feels that way because even though she is a hard 24 and he might be a young 70, it just looks father-granddaughter.
You know, I'll bet you his kids are in their 40s. I mean, if he's 70 and he has a kid when he's, 25 to 30, then he's got a 40 to 45-year-old, and a 40 to 5-year-old could easily have a 24-year-old. This is granddaughter material.
Yeah, this is kind of treading into Hugh Hefner territory there. I don't give this relationship a long duration. I think it's probably going to run its course. He might be having like not even a midlife crisis because he's beyond that, but whatever age you are when you have another crisis in your life, maybe that's what it is. But here's the thing. What I don't understand, Will, from a female's perspective, I understand why older men want to date younger women. Obviously, younger, she's not wrinkly, she's got a new lease on life. But when I watch her, she doesn't give me 24-year-old fun, lighthearted energy. She gives me old woman, bitter, cranky energy. So I don't get the allure. Obviously, she's a pretty younger lady, but she's not giving off like fun, carefree vibes that I would assume a 70-year-old would be interested in if he's trying to go that young. So the whole thing is very perplexing. She doesn't seem like a fun time to me.
Seems like a good subject for a deep dive on Tomi Lahren is Fearless. What is the real age of Jordan Hudson? I like it. I think people are going to tune in for that, Tommy. You should do that. Meanwhile, in more serious news, I want to talk to you about this county attorney in Minnesota who's getting some notoriety. Her name is Mary Moriarty. She's from Hennepin County. She recently hit the radar because she was one of the prosecutors who let some Tesla vandals up in Minnesota off with a relative slap on the wrist, not serious punishment. And then an organization called KARE 11, that was the local television station, got this memo from Mary Moriarty to her prosecutors in her department, talking about using race as a guideline when it comes to prosecutors making and offering plea deals. So this is before it goes, before the judge or a jury. Prosecutors can offer the defense a plea deal. And this is what it says. While racial identity and age are not appropriate grounds for departures from sentencing guidelines, proposed resolution should consider the person charged as a whole person, including their racial identity and age. While these factors should not be controlling, they should be part of the overall analysis. Racial disparities harm our community, lead to distrust, have a negative impact on community safety. Prosecutors should be identifying and addressing racial disparities at decision points as appropriate. That's a lot of language. The whole controlling thing, it's like that's legalese and CYA to make sure that it's not like you're using race exclusively or as the primary thing. But she's saying basically give some races better plea deals than other races. Don't treat it as justice is blind.
Yeah, and it's racist. Can you imagine if this were the other way around? I mean, let's go way back when we had real racist issues in our country. Can you imagine somebody in her position saying, you know what, if they're a certain race, maybe they should be given more leniency, and that race was the white race? That would be so disgustingly wrong. We would look back on this and think how horrifying it is. But now sitting in 2025, she's some kind of a progressive hero for this. The left is obsessed with race. They can't do anything without injecting race into it. We saw that with Carmelo Anthony in Frisco, Texas, which you've covered extensively. And we're seeing it in Minnesota. And it also tells me that Minnesota has learned nothing from the Summer of Love 2020, when Minneapolis, St. Paul became unlivable. They let them loot and burn the Target, the whole city, and it was, well, if it's for George Floyd, I guess we gotta let it happen. They turned the other cheek and they watched their city burn. Governor Walz's Minnesota again. So these places, these deep blue jurisdictions, they've learned nothing. But at the end of the day, they are obsessed with race, and I think that makes you a racist, quite frankly.
And I think it's incredibly revealing. Whenever the right, Tommy, I actually want to talk to you about some of the things we talk about from a perspective of a conservative or from the quote unquote right. When the right says, the goal of much of DEI and the animating philosophy of the modern left is the destruction of Western civilization, it just keeps coming up. So in other words, the idea that justice is blind, and again, the excuse is always, well, we haven't lived up to that principle. And that is absolutely true, as you pointed out. Rewind the clock 70 or 80 years, and the idea of a white man and a black man before the justice system receiving equal justice was not a reality. And that is an indictment of our execution of our principles, not the principles themselves. One of those principles being justice is blind, right? Equal before the law. But as the left continues to embrace ideas that undercut the principles of Western civilization, the thing that we built, and this is not an isolated incident. You and I could come up with not half a dozen, but dozens, plural, positions they've taken that undercut their fidelity to Western civilization and, in fact, reinforce the idea it's a project of destruction. And reimagining it in what image is a great question. No one knows. But this is like cutting at the foundations of what we live upon here. This idea, you know what? We were bad in the past, so let's just get rid of the principles. Let's not do it. Let's not pretend justice is blind.
Yeah, well, you don't cure racism with more racism. And that was the whole point of DEI, once again, birthed in 2020, the dumbest year in modern American history. It brought us COVID, lockdowns, shutdowns, vaccine, mask mandates. It brought us this radical notion of racial justice, which was completely outside of the bounds, to your point, of how we should have been operating. And that's another reason why President Trump was elected in November of 2024, because people are just so sick and tired of it. But this is what white liberals do to make themselves feel better. It's a worthless virtue signal. And honestly, it's really, in my opinion, insulting and condescending to communities that they're supposedly trying to uplift. You're saying, well, you commit a crime, we're going to consider the fact that you're this race, and we're going to let you off a little easier. To me, that's really demeaning. And I think that the number of people that switch to Republican or MAGA, whatever you want to call them, also indicates that they're tired of being talked down to by the progressive left. But they won't stop. They keep it up.
Well, this is another story I want to talk to you about that I think is worthy of analysis on several levels. So details have emerged through a big report in the New York Times about what happened in the big Army helicopter plane crash in D.C., where the helicopter flew into the plane, killed a ton of people in D.C. This was in like the first day of Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy taking office. In this report from the New York Times, it's revealed that the pilot of the Blackhawk helicopter made several errors and ignored several warnings about the height she was flying at, 300 down 200, her flight path, several times ignored warnings and instructions. She was the highest ranking officer on this craft, but the NCO next to her had more experience, much more experience, and was giving her some stuff along the way, including up to 15 seconds before the crash, like a direct, hey, you need to cut left, essentially. You need to go east towards the bank, whatever it was. And she didn't do it. There was also mistakes apparently made in the air traffic control tower as well. Were they understaffed? Was the guy juggling too many things? Was he trying to pull off what they call like a really rare squeeze play of getting everything in on a tight schedule? But this shows that the pilot of that Blackhawk, who was a female, ignored several warning signs and instructions leading up to the crash. That, by the way, detail was buried in the New York Times report. It was deep, deep, deep in the report if you wanted to find out how much went wrong in her lead up to that crash. First, what are your thoughts?
Well, when this first happened, and some on the right were so quick to proclaim this, another instance of DEI, it must have been a woman, it must have been transgender. That was the narrative online. And I actually criticized that, Will, because I thought, you know what, it is far too soon for people to be making this call. Let's wait until we get the facts. Just proclaiming DEI anytime something happens, I think is reckless and irresponsible. However, when it turns out that you do have a female, don't try to bury that, because then it seems like you're trying to cover for this person because of her protected class. Now, I don't know why she didn't listen. I don't know why she made the decisions that she made. We're probably never going to know. But now, unfortunately, you've opened up a whole Pandora's box, and there are so many women pilots and other, folks that are in important commanding roles that are going to be questioned. And that's why DEI was such a stupid idea from the get-go, because DEI ushered in the doubt with anybody that's in a so-called marginalized class. So the whole thing is frustrating. But I think we might need a little bit more information about this person in particular. And were they, qualified? Were they rushed through and given qualifications because of a DEI initiative? Well, now we have to ask the questions.
Perfect take. That's exactly what I believe. Everything you just said. I think there's also a little bit of validation, and this is like we don't know if it does become a little bit more validation of what Donald Trump said when he first came out. He's like, I don't think he affirmatively ever said this is a product of DEI. He said, but we got to look at that. Was this a possibility? And then it's immediately dismissed and criticized. But as is often with the case with Trump, well, he does know more than the rest of us about the details of some of these things. And he has a reason he's saying that. So we should wait and see. But I totally agree with you. First of all, the fact that it was a female pilot does not confirm for us that DEI played a role in this. It doesn't. Now, you put it perfectly. If we find out that this female pilot was advanced in unqualified measures or advanced above people who were more qualified than her, then DEI becomes part of the conversation. Simply being a female and making a mistake does not mean it's DEI. You put it perfectly. I love what you said as well, though. It is not irrational for people to now start to wonder whether or not DEI is part of the picture, because when you have it, it calls into question the qualifications of everyone. It's the same thing with affirmative action, which Clarence Thomas has said several times. Because affirmative action exists, every black justice or judge who's advanced has to sort of live under the doubt of whether or not you were advanced because of affirmative action. And it's a rational thing for human beings to think that way, and it's a cost of bringing in these measures, whether or not it's affirmative action or DEI, that we know do push people beyond their merit.
Yeah, and that's why this whole notion is so frustrating. Listen, we've got problems in our country. We've got racism in our country. We know this, but we have come so far from where we were at one point in time. But there seems to be a group of people that wants to keep pulling us back to that place. And I don't know if it gets them clicks and attention. There are some people that are on air or that are writing or that have positions simply because they race bait constantly. I think there's a lot of folks at ESPN that would maybe fall into that category, certainly a lot in sports media. I mean, even this past weekend, dissecting the people that were talking about the NFL draft and if there were enough of this and enough of that. And it really cheapens the whole conversation. But there are some people that will never let it go. And it's unfortunate because we could actually progress as a nation and as a people, but some people just don't seem to want that to happen.
All right, I want you to hear this. This is from Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker talking about the moment and Donald Trump in this first 100 days.
Never before in my life have I called for mass protests, for mobilization, for disruption. But I am now. These Republicans cannot know a moment of peace. They have to understand that we will fight their cruelty with every megaphone and microphone that we have. We must castigate them on the soapbox and then punish them at the ballot box.
All right, he says these Republicans must never know a moment of peace, Tommy. He then goes on to say that the administration and supporters are traitors and tyrants. Now, I was thinking about this morning, Tommy. This type of stuff, it's just hard not to believe it led to 2 different assassination attempts of Donald Trump. It's led to the vandalization of Teslas. It's led to, firebombing Tesla dealerships. It's led to a lot of insane behavior. And I did sit there and go, okay, Will, if somewhere on the left were listening, would they say, well, what about the rhetoric of Donald Trump? And I do think Donald Trump engages in inflammatory rhetoric. I don't think he's called his opponents tyrants or traitors. Trying to think, Tommy. I'm willing to be corrected. I'm trying to think what the worst of what he's had to say is. But this is, in my mind, all too common now on the left.
Well, it is. And the reason it's occurring, in my humble opinion, is that all of these Democrats are the pick-me's. They all want to be in line for 2028. And so they have to say the most outrageous thing possible to get headlines. And JB saw AOC, Jasmine Crockett, Bernie Sanders, Cory Booker with his 25-hour talk fest. He probably knew that they were going to do this sit on the stairs yesterday and do nothing. So they're all trying to get attention. They're not trying to actually have policy positions or solutions, even in the Democrat frame. They just want attention. They want headlines. They want name ID. And it's reckless when they say these things, but also when they're calling for people to, we need you to protest in the streets. All right, that's an American thing to do. But I would ask these far left progressives what gathering in the streets with signs has done to improve anybody's life. Unless you're advocating for a certain policy that you want passed, then standing around saying that you hate Donald Trump advances nothing. But I don't think they have a solution. I think anti-Trump has always been the only narrative that they have. And instead of actually coming up with something that they think is going to better someone's life, this is what they do, because they want to be famous more than they want to do anything else.
And they're just so dedicated, so addicted to the idea of Donald Trump as authoritarian, as a tyrant. They're just so addicted to it. And I don't think they'll ever shake the addiction, ever. Like, I think even when he's not president anymore, it'll continue to be the thing that they sort of run with. I think it's ran them into insanity and cul-de-sacs. It's got them advocating for Kilmar Brego Garcia, you know, the MS-13 alleged gang member. I mean, because it's anti-Trump. That position is the opposite of Trump, be the opposite of the tyrant. And I think it's running the entire party into a cul-de-sac.
Well, I would also say, I think whether President Trump were president or not, or it was somebody else, I think that they would advocate for illegal aliens to remain in our country. I think that that is their main policy position. And I think it's because they worked so hard for 4 years while Joe was asleep to get as many illegals into this country as possible. So the fact that this president or any president could undo all that hard work terrifies them. They don't want all these people that they brought in to be shown the door. They worked hard to get them all in here. So this advocating for Kilmar Brego Garcia or any other illegal alien, you got, the judge that's leading one out the back door that's been accused of beating 2 people. They don't care. They see all of these people as future voters, probably future mail-in voters. And I think that that's where their advocacy is. Outside of being just anti-Trump, I really do think they're dedicated to illegal immigration.
All right, you can hear more of this in 30 minutes. Tomi Lahren is fearless at foxnews.com and at outkick.com. Always love hanging out with her. Tomi Lahren. Thank you so much, Tomi. All right.
Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Hey, when we come back, I want the guys to check me. Like, what is the most inflammatory rhetoric from Donald Trump? Like, and I'm sure you're in the comment section. So make sure I don't miss something. I do. I want to check myself on that and see if it meets this now 5 to 10 year project of calling Donald Trump an authoritarian Nazi tyrant. We'll make sure we check that when we come back on the Will Cain Show. Hey, I was standing around last night at a family barbecue. We do this once a month, had everybody in. Somebody was in my backyard and looked at me, oh, you got a Blackstone? I go, yeah. And he was talking about getting a Blackstone grill for the backyard. I'm like, man, it's burgers. That's what you use it for. And I love it, but I don't know how pancakes, what else you get it for? But the thing is, you don't need that. You don't need that. And one of the problems that you don't need it just for burgers. And it may not even be that you need it for burgers anymore because Omaha Steaks is making something new. It's incredible. It is designed to ensure that you always have an available smash burger. You know how smash burgers fall apart sometimes? I mean, people love them. Crispy, caramelized, sear, bold flavor. I love a smash burger. But now with Omaha Steaks, you can do it without the hassle. It's called their all-new smash burgers. They're pre-smashed and 100% extra-aged beef that won't fall apart when you flip them. Right now, you can get 16 free in the Built for the Grill pack at omahasteaks.com/smash. Easy to remember because you're going for the smash burger. Omaha Steaks, by the way, is awesome. I have a freezer load full of it. I always love the convenience of having high-quality protein available for me, not just at dinner, but for lunch as well. And the flavor of Omaha Steaks and their burgers and their chicken is unmatched. You got to check out this new Omaha Steaks smash burgers built for the grill. Again, pre-smashed, so you can enjoy them at home. They're made from 100% premium aged Omaha Steaks beef for exceptional quality and flavor. Omaha Steaks smash burgers go from the freezer to the bun in 5 minutes. Omaha Steaks, by the way, is somebody that you can trust because they've been America's original butcher since 1917, family-owned for over 100 years with expertise in the meat industry. Get ready to smash expectations with new Omaha Steaks smash burgers. Visit omahasteaks.com/smash and order the Built for the Grill pack with 16 free smash burgers. It's time for the grill season. That's 16 free Omaha Steaks smash burgers at omahasteaks.com/smash. Or go to omahasteaks.com and order the Built for the Grill pack with 16 free smash burgers. Minimum purchase may apply. See site for details. A big thanks to our friends over there at Omaha Steaks. You got to hear about the plummet of Shedeur Sanders. Was it because he's a black quarterback? Next on the Will Cain Show. Is race the reason the NFL took a pass 4 to 5 times on Colorado quarterback Shedeur Sanders? It is the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, the Fox News Facebook page. Let's bring in the fellas. So, guys, this weekend, I went to Clemson, South Carolina. It was really awesome. I got to tour the football facilities. I got to meet Dabo. It was awesome. I saw the Savannah Bananas, which I'd never heard of before. And everybody's in on this. You guys all know what it is. I mean, 81,000 people at Death Valley. 81,000. And I'm fascinated by the business that is the Savannah Bananas. Mm-hmm. But outside of that, all anybody was talking about was Shedeur. Like, why has he not been drafted? Why has he not been drafted? Shedeur Sanders, the son of Deion Sanders, quarterback at Colorado. I would say going into the draft, most people suspected a late first, maybe a second-round quarterback. Mel Kiper loved him. Mel Kiper had him number 1 overall. Mel Kiper was really animated over the weekend and why the NFL was passing on Shedeur Sanders. I'm going to be up front. I love Mel. I think Mel's entertaining. He's not always right. Who is when it comes to the NFL draft?
Todd.
And I can tell you something else about Mel Kiper. Good dude. He's a good dude. But everybody was talking about Mel all weekend. But the conversation around Shedeur's fall got insane fast. Okay, first of all, the President of the United States tweeted about it. Donald Trump, when would he do this? On Saturday or was it on Friday?
With NFL owners.
Do it, James. You have a better impression than I do.
Are they stupid? Deion Sanders was a great college football player and even greater in the NFL. He was also a very good coach, streetwise and smart. Therefore, Shedeur, his quarterback son, has phenomenal genes and is all set for greatness. He should be, quote, picked immediately by a team that wants to win. Good luck, Shedeur, and say hello to your wonderful father.
I love that phenomenal genes is in all caps, too.
I don't.
How
does the cadence translate to how he talks? It's kind of unclear.
You were pretty good.
It was.
He emphasizes random words, and he pauses at the end of sentences often before the last word of the sentence.
So you get it. So he makes sure it's in your mind.
Just like the Founding Fathers did. They used to capitalize random words in the middle of sentences for emphasis.
He believes in good genes. I love that. I mean, and you know what? That's another thing where Donald Trump's onto something. You're not supposed to, that sounds like an old person thing to say, good genes. But you know what? It's a thing. Good genes.
It sounds, it's almost questionable to say that, but you're like,
Very similar.
But why?
I don't know.
Oh, I got one. When we had our high school senior day, end of baseball, all the fathers threw threw the first pitch out to their sons, and they did it one by one. There's 9 or 10 of us, and most of the dads are kind of bouncing it or chucking it there, and then George Kirby's dad comes out, and it's just, you're like, oh,
of course.
That's where that came from. Genes.
At least he spelled
of course.
Genes.
Brett Favre, great genes.
By the way, there's no place more obvious about phenomenal genes than in sports. We all talk about that, coach's son, whatever. We know it plays a role. But not everybody was as eloquent as the president. Jamal Bowman, former congressman, had this to say about Shedeur's fall in the draft.
someone like Shedeur Sanders, because he talk a certain way and because he wears gold chains and his pops is Dion and he don't want to submit to y'all white shit, he's gonna slip in the draft. And you're telling me it's based on the evaluation. Like, you didn't watch the games and watch him play and see him play.
This is so stupid. It's so stupid. And unfortunately, my friend Stephen A. Smith just made it even worse. Stephen A. tweeted the following. Someone just texted me this message, and they are absolutely correct. This is a bad look for the NFL. This feels like Kaepernick-level collusion. All the hard work the NFL league office puts in to eradicate these kinds of perceptions, only to turn around and watch as the owners look like they're colluding, messing everything up. What has been done to Shedeur will outshine everything else in this draft. We'll never believe this is about just talent evaluation again. All right. So the implication is obvious that it's race. Can we just, Kaepernick. There are 32 NFL owners and GMs and scouts on top of that, all making independent decisions and competing with one another. If one of them thought the other 31 were wrong, they would do something different. You know why? Because they want to win. This idea is beyond absurd. Beyond absurd. On the Kaepernick, just to revisit it, 32 NFL owners made independent decisions that he was not worth the hit to business versus what he offered you on the football field. With Shedeur, they decide independently it is not worth the headache for the limited upside. So I've read everything about this, like the scouting reports, and Mel believes differently. And here's the thing about the draft. Maybe Mel is right, Mel Kiper, and give him 5 years. And in 5 years, we'll look back on it and we'll go, Mel, you were ridiculous, or Mel, you were right, and you were better than all 32 owners. And that's very possible because they were wrong on Tom Brady. They can be wrong. It's not about whether or not they're right. They all passed on Tom Brady 5+ times. So maybe they're wrong on Shedeur, but we know why they made the decision about Shedeur. And it wasn't anything to do with race, as was said by a couple of other guys. Who is this guy? He works for Tinfoil Pat. Who's he work for? TNT Sports? Who's this Stan Becton? I don't know who he is.
Yeah, TNT Sports.
TNT?
Looks like community noted.
Okay. All right, so he tweets, the Giants don't like black quarterbacks. This has been documented over time. No way they were getting a black quarterback with the personality of Shedeur Sanders, unfortunately. So their community noted, what did it say? Oh, yeah. They had a black quarterback in 2022 with Tyrod Taylor, in 17 with Geno Smith. They have signed 2 black quarterbacks this offseason in Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston.
I guess Jameis isn't black
That's
enough.
a great community note.
Wrong.
Jameis is known for his flamboyant character.
And it, by the way, it's so they have to do this, like whatever Jamal Bowman was doing about the way Shedeur acts, right? Because the number 1 overall pick in this draft was a black quarterback in Cam Ward. So we've reached peak stupidity here, okay? And Peter Rosenberg, who I used to work with at ESPN, I'm not sure where he is now, he also tweeted about this. He said, some white people may not understand why race is becoming conversation around Shedeur. It may or may not have anything to do with what's going on here, but the relationship between America and brash black athletes has deep history. White America is historically angered and scared of men like Shedeur Sanders. So whether that's happening here or not, that history and feeling cannot go away. Okay, so he's pivoting it beyond, it's not just that he's black, it's that he's brash. Go ahead, 2 days.
I think, but you can say that about Johnny Manziel. People were worried about his attitude going into the draft too. So it's the same exact thing. It's that kind of like unhumble, thing that people are afraid of. So it was happening, not just with Shedeur, but other quarterbacks.
Okay, brash and Jamal Bowman make it seem like that Shedeur is just confident or cocky.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you something about the NFL. It's full of cocky and confident men. It is, without a doubt.
You have to be.
In that entire draft. And by the way, what was the draft? Probably 50, 60, 70% black. So, hundreds of brash, confident black men were drafted. With Shedeur, it was something else, and it is not that hard to figure out. It's a circus, and it's a circus. It's a circus that involves Dion. Is Dion going to go to a press conference and criticize my GM and my coach if Shedeur doesn't play, or if Shedeur doesn't like the offense. This is all stuff you have to figure out. And then on top of all of that, Shedeur bombed, man. He bombed his interviews. The reports are out there. I heard one that he was working out at the combine in the gym, and a big-time NFL coach was just going to go say hi to Shedeur. And Shedeur walked past him, would not acknowledge him, except to say when passing, you already have a quarterback. I don't have time to talk to you. I mean, like, how's that going to fly? How's this, that's not brash. That's something else. And nobody wants to deal with that, especially when you're talking about a guy who's not clearly the next Andrew Luck, not clearly the next John Elway. I'm talking about those guys that come along who are no doubt number 1 overall picks. Those guys, maybe you can put up with some of that. And I think it's still a maybe. I think it would ding their draft status. So this is all beyond ridiculous. And it is, I don't know if this is residual Kaepernick stuff or not. Like, they got addicted to that storyline. They loved that storyline. It was hugely viral, so they're going to go in on it again. The final angle I want to do with this is I still feel bad for Shedeur in some ways. I feel bad he was prank called during the draft. We have a copy of it. The news is out now. The kid who prank called Shedeur and made him think he was getting drafted is the son of the Atlanta Falcons defensive coordinator. He got the phone number apparently off of his dad's iPad, who had left it open. And during the draft, this happened when this kid called Shedeur.
Hey, is this Shedeur? Hey, this is Mickey Loomis here, the GM of the New Orleans Saints. How you doing? This is Mickey Loomis here, GM of the Saints.
How you doing?
Good, how are you, man?
Good, been waiting on you.
Yeah, we have. It's been a long wait, man. We're going to take you with our next pick right here, man.
It's ain't gonna be nothing to
Hey, but you're going to have to wait a little bit longer, man. Sorry about that.
What does that mean? What? What did he say? I don't know. How you gonna ask us what it means and you was on the phone? You heard that?
He said you're gonna have to wait a little bit longer.
So, for those listening on radio or podcast, the videos are side by side. The kid videoed himself. It's not a very good prank, by the way.
It's horrible.
You're gonna have to wait a little. It didn't make sense. I understand Shadeur's confusion.
I don't think.
What is that? What happened?
I don't think they were sober. That looked like a Friday night in a college dorm too.
Why? That's the problem. Videoing everything these days, the kids are gonna be in trouble.
There was a similar prank, but it was much more lighthearted, where kids were like in a dorm room and somebody got the master's phone number and asked for a tea time on Thursday. That was a little more lighthearted, and it was.
I've seen local radio
emulated
do that. I've listened to I've seen local radio call the masters and just see if they can get a tea time. It's funny. And apparently this happened to a lot of other guys too. Chase Lunt, who's an offensive lineman from Connecticut, he apparently got pranked several times. Another guy or two got pranked.
Penn State.
The kid was reading off a note card, by the way. Did you see that? I mean,
You can't memorize that? You can't go off the cuff?
I know.
You can't do a prank off the cuff. You got to write it down.
Have you seen the one where they call the kid out, where they call the baseball team and they get someone to go warm up in the bullpen? They're like, he's in the dugout. No, get him out to the bullpen.
Oh, really? They can get in on the bullpen lines?
It's like a college team. I think the pitcher's now on the Mets. It was A.J. Minter. Anyway.
Well, I do feel bad for Shedeur on that front. I don't feel bad for where he was drafted. I think that he has to learn something about, honestly, entitlement and behavior and the way he conducted himself through this interview process, and hopefully conducts himself differently when inside an NFL building. But, I mean, I feel bad from that prank call. That's a big day to have your hopes, lifted and then dropped like that. That stinks. But it has nothing to do with race. All right, when we come back, we have got a legend. We have got Kelsey Grammer coming up on our show. He's got a brand new series out on Fox Nation. We're going to talk about his love of not just America, but American history. Next on The Will Cain Show. Blood on the Bridge. The Battle of Lexington and Concord is a new special out at Fox Nation, and it's hosted by actor and comedian, director Kelsey Grammer. This is the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel and the Fox News Facebook page. Of course, you know him from Cheers, from Frasier. He's a legend in sitcom and comedy, and he is an absolute lover of America. It's really fascinating to talk to Kelsey Grammer and hear the emotion in his voice as he signed up once again for another special about American history, this time focusing in on the Revolution and specifically what led up to these men, Sam Adams, George Washington, and the Advent, the Battle of Lexington, Concord. Here is the legendary Kelsey Grammer. Kelsey Grammer, actor, comedian, director, also the host of Fox Nation's brand new series, Blood on the Bridge, the Battle of Lexington and Concord. It's up April 28th. Kelsey, great to see you.
Likewise. Thanks, Will. And like I said, we said earlier, I said congratulations on everything. You're doing some great work.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, it's you find yourself in surreal places in life. One of them is interviewing Kelsey Grammer, who you've watched for most of your life. One thing I think that someone who maybe hasn't been as plugged into some of your more recent work, especially that with Fox, wouldn't know is how interested you are, how captivated you might be by American history. Whether or not it's been sitcoms or many of the other projects you've done throughout your life that have made you so well known. What is it that grabs you about history?
I suppose what got me started down the road of it was my respect for my granddad, who raised me. But he served in World War II, Guadalcanal. He was there for 28 months, active duty, and then we would go to Fort Monmouth when I was a boy to shop, and he was a retired colonel at that time, and I just had this great sense of reverence for the people that served the country, and thought understanding what had happened and why we existed, why America was as important as it is, and why it remains in my mind as important as it is, comes from my sense of history and why my connection to these guys. I mean, for instance, I'm sitting here in my office, kind of. I got this is a book written by George Washington's writings. I mean, that's I leaf through that all the time. My reverence for the founding fathers and for their idealism and for their focus on the individual is what has carried me into an interest for history, but also that sense of identifying with what they did, the personal sacrifice that went into making up the fact that we exist is something that I want to revere and celebrate and keep in people's minds, especially with how things have been going lately, the narrative. And I don't like using the word narrative because everybody else uses it. But what has happened in terms of our traditional understanding of our history has been sort of warped into another kind of, into an overlay of political kind of influence and change has overridden it. And I think if you don't know who you are, you're easier to control. And I think we have to help people understand who they are, where they came from, the stuff that we're made of. And the stuff that we're made of is pretty extraordinary.
What do you think is so extraordinary? To listen to you talk about not just America, but the founding fathers of America, it reminds me of the way I feel as well when you have a sense of history, which probably for me began to be something more than emotional, more than simply reverence, when I went to law school, and I began to understand the unique nature of the rights that were enshrined by those founding fathers, the unique genius and wisdom that they displayed in creating this experiment, which I think stands out from the rest of humanity. For you, what is it that you have this understanding in listening to you talk about the founding fathers that sets apart us here in America?
It wasn't the arrogance of thinking we were individual, but the insistence that the individual be the defining factor of our government. And of course, I think that principle has been sort of woefully abandoned in the past 50 years or so. But I know that there's always hope, and we always pull it back. I think that's what's great about it. And I do think there is a spiritual component. I think there is God. But what I continue to abide by in my understanding of it is that the living, sort of breathing experiment that is the United States of America is a daily effort, is a daily involvement and a daily commitment from everybody that's in the country to really remember how important it is to celebrate that spirit of freedom, that fight for freedom, that willingness to do the right thing it's characterized by people who are willing to do the right thing all the time, and that's what keeps me going, keeps me on it, and I respect your going to law school. I never went to law school. I've spent a good deal of time dealing with lawyers, and I'm not so sure how high up on the rung they are for me. But I've certainly met some that merit respect and who've earned, some real honor. And I know that profession is still capable of producing people like that.
I'm not here to defend the profession, but I would defend the education. And the education did begin the process of giving me a great understanding of rights and the enshrined documents, the documents that enshrined those rights, both the Declaration, but most notably the Constitution of the United States. But for me, Kelsey, that meant that most of my exposure and then therefore my attraction to what made us unique was the thinkers of the time. It was a bit of the Jeffersons and the Madisons and the Hamiltons that envisioned the experiments of America. In this story, in this series you have at Fox Nation, Blood on the Bridge, you actually talk about, though, the revolutionaries, the men of action, not just the men of ideas. You focus in, as you host this series, on guys like Samuel Adams. What did you... I want to talk a little bit about the history and what you've learned and what you share in this series, but let's talk a minute about the men, like just the men involved in this unique moment in history.
Right. I don't know what it was that kind of harvested them and brought them together in this moment of crisis or of even just of dedication. They put the idea of human freedom above their individual rights. They were willing to sacrifice their lives for it. I don't know where that came from. That may be, I don't think it's specifically American. I think it's been part of what we're given. I think it's biblical. I mean, I think people are dedicated to the idea that freedom is God's greatest gift to us. And that was enshrined in our Constitution, certainly, and in our Declaration of Independence, which I think, I look on the Declaration as the founding document of the country, basically. But this battle took place before that, which is fascinating. And so the conversation about freedom and what you're willing to do for it was already in their minds. And the idea that the Minutemen existed was, I think that was John Hancock, who donated a great deal of his personal wealth to this idea that we should be ready to deploy. And I guess that's where a lot of our Second Amendment stuff comes from. He knew that we had to be ready to fight. And he put that into motion. And of course, then the British got wind of this and then thought, well, we're going to go stop this, and ran into a bunch of ragtag guys who got the warning from Paul Revere and several other writers at the same time that the British were coming to basically take their weapons and take their ammunition. And they said, no, you're not. And of course, they got kind of slaughtered at first, but I think it was, I forget the exact number of British regulars that encountered them, but it was overwhelming odds. But then on their way back, after encountering this smaller group of men, they ran into a mobilized Minuteman force that overwhelmed them, and then the war was on, and that was pretty extraordinary.
What about the driving forces, which you explore again in this series? Like among the men, as I understand it, guys like Adams, Samuel Adams, were huge figures in pushing this into a rebellion, a revolution. Not simply an argument, not simply a cause, but to understand and to push others who might have been more reluctant towards this complete rebellion from the British.
Right. Well, that I can only chalk that off to I don't even know what they did, so I can only tell by their action what kind of people they were, or at least sort of translate what kind of people they actually were. They, put on their lines, their lives, their souls, and their sacred honors. Freedom suddenly became the ascendant value for them in all things. And they did have some wealth, and Samuel Adams certainly had some concerns in terms of continue to prosper and be treated decently. With decency, they were willing to fight for a fair shake. It's fascinating, these guys. But one that was defined by the individual and his own needs, rather than a sort of a group think but eventually enough people finally came along for the ride and said, we request and desire and are willing to die for freedom and for somebody else's freedom. And I thought I think that's the defining thing. Samuel Adams is devotion, and the whole idea of the Freedom Trail. And when I was on Cheers, of course, I went and visited Boston years ago, and I found it remarkable that the most popular tourist attraction in Boston at the time was the Cheers bar. When if you just walk like half a block down, you can see where the beginning of the country started, like where the ideas started to ruminate and sort of, fester or come together and percolate and create this movement that became a nation. I mean, they built a nation there, and most people were going to see, where Sam and Diane were hanging out. But I always loved the people of Boston. I had a great relationship with them, but at the same time, an abiding sense of that history. I visited Old Ironsides when I was there, and really enjoyed that visit. And I became great friends with some of the cops on the force there, and with Mayor Menino at the time, who was just a fantastic guy, and that sort of civic pride that they had, that they were still basically connected as one of the great birthplaces of our country. And that was still sort of in there. So it was still sort of the fabric of visiting Boston. It's a great place, and the birth of a great nation.
You mentioned a moment ago, in very kind terms, me going to law school. I'll tell you at the outset, one of my great regrets, which I probably developed a little bit later in life, but there was a seed, even in my 20s, like I did not serve. I wished I served. I'm just curious in listening to you talk about your grandfather and the great reverence that you have. Was that ever a path that you considered?
Yeah, I consistently have a sense of shame. It doesn't eat away at me, but there have been moments when I've always thought, I'm around guys who have served, and I've seen them, what they've been through and what they've done. I kind of sensed that, well, I should have stepped up. I should have been there. What happened to me was I wanted to attend Annapolis when I was a boy. I loved sailing. I loved the sea. That's kind of where I grew up on the East Coast. And my grandfather was good friends with the Admiral of Admissions at the time, and he invited him over for dinner. I was 12 years old. And the Admiral told me that, he said, well, if you keep your grades up, you get a full ride, you serve the country for a few years, you come out as an officer. And just make sure your math is in good shape and you'll get in. And so I had assurances I was going to go to Annapolis. And that to me was the ultimate goal. But then my grandfather died suddenly. We didn't anticipate he was going to die. He retired early. We moved to Florida. And a week after we got there, he died. And that just threw everything into a tailspin. I was suddenly the only man of the family, and there were 3 women in the family I had to kind of look after, and I wasn't quite prepared for all of it. And so I turned to acting, which is interesting. I found this love of literature that kind of nurtured me and got me through all that. And my path then was kind of defined in a different way. Now, we were in the midst of Vietnam at the time as well, and it not being a popular war certainly had some influence on me. Not that I wouldn't have gone. I went down and registered for the draft, and thought, well, if my number comes up, I'm going. But by then, President Nixon had begun the sort of the drawdown and to leave with dignity kind of thing. It didn't work out so well, but still, he sort of saved my life. I didn't have to go through that, but I admire the men who did, and I consistently feel like there's just a piece of my manhood that isn't quite fulfilled by having not served.
I think it's a wonderfully well put way to think about it, because I feel the same. Just a piece of my manhood that's not fulfilled. Not a complete sense of shame, but a bit of regret that that's not part of my story in life.
I try to make it,
Well, I think telling some of these stories is part of that. Let's set aside the moral pull to tell these stories and to make sure that people understand the nature of, as you put it, of the United States of America. But from a commercial aspect as well, Kelsey, and you brought up 2 elements here. There are 2 bodies of work that I just feel like, while not unexplored, are still such fertile ground for storytelling. And one of those is the story of America. You can watch John Adams on HBO. And, there are series here and there that crop up. But certainly I don't think to the extent that you get a heist movie, and I love a heist movie. Don't get me wrong. I love a heist movie. Just watched Den of Thieves Part 2 the other night. But one wouldn't make the argument, we don't have enough heist movies. I just think that the story of America, all of it, by the way, is such fertile ground. And by the way, so is the story of faith. So is the story of religion. I mean, this is the animating story probably of humanity, if not humanity in its entirety, most of the globe. And I'm just, what you think about that, like, if I were, and I'd like to think in some ways I am, and you certainly are, if we were Hollywood production studios, you and I would immediately sit down and go, look at these two fertile grounds to plow. What stories do we have about faith and about America?
I think the Hollywood community, quote unquote, is actually starting to warm to the idea of more faith-based stuff. They've seen it succeed, of course, and there's nothing like success to make something attractive. I was in Jesus Revolution a while ago, and that sort of kicked off my openness about faith. The stories in the Bible are extraordinary stories. I mean, and honestly, it is interesting how just a sentence about one person can turn into a whole story. It extrapolates into a huge story about the human existence, about our fight for discovery. I mean, Barabbas, for instance. There's a wonderful film about Barabbas that I'd love to remake, actually, about the guy that was freed instead, and Jesus was taken in his name. He was haunted for the rest of his life by this Jesus guy. He didn't know what to do about it, and finally he became a Christian. But it's a fantastic story about this relationship with the spiritual and sort of the balancing line between the physical world, which is earth, and the spiritual world, which was Jesus's realm and where he crossed over. But anyway, there is definitely awareness of what a great treasure trove there is of storytelling left in faith. And certainly in our American story, we've covered quite a bit of it. I mean, I've done a lot of the battles for America, and there's been other stuff that I've done that I will still watch once in a while and think, oh yeah, I forgot we put that in there. Oh yeah, let's go to. So it's complex and huge. And I am related to General Putnam, who was the Battle of Bunker Hill. Don't fire till you see the whites of their eyes. That maybe has always stuck with me a little bit, that, I'm related to that guy, which is one of the great sort of greatest advice, I guess, battlefield advice would be, don't fire till you see the whites of their eyes. I suppose that makes as much sense as anything else we talk about. It's like sort of, okay, you can't miss if they're that close. But I'm trying to think. There is something so wonderfully engaging about it that we've lost a connection to the value of those people, and what they went through. And to personalize that, I guess, would maybe revivify a sense of how important it was, this event, our revolution, and becoming the country we became.
Right.
Granted, we're full of flaws. We make mistakes, we stumble, we fall, but that's the beauty of it. We have a constitution and a structure that allows us to overcome what goes wrong. And I think, we sway back and forth on a sort of a pendulum between, error and accuracy, and the government has a sort of a sweet spot where it's focused and engaged in our lives, and and yet enhances liberty and leaves us alone a bit, and allows us to make our own decisions on things. I mean, I do think taxation is ridiculous and it's excessive. We're finding out a lot of things about that now in our current society, but the experiment in the United States of America is still underway. It's still happening. It's still unfolding, and that's what I love about it. I did hear something a while ago that I really enjoyed. I thought, we don't need to rewrite the Constitution. We need to reread it. I think that's a really good idea. Yeah, it's,
I love that.
We're going to fix that. Oh no, honestly, just went back and reread it. You might find it's in there already.
You might be impressed. That's a really good line. All right, in this series, Blood on the Bridge, the Battle of Lexington and Concord, you have 4 parts. You focused in on what happens in Boston with episode 1, the powder keg, then the ride of Paul Revere, the alarm system, the midnight ride, then the shot heard around the world, and that is the focus on exactly what happened at Lexington, Concord, and then finally the siege of Boston. I'm curious, is there one story or one moment that either you didn't know about that was eye-opening for you, or that has really stuck with you in the same way of don't shoot them till you see the whites of their eyes, or we don't need to rewrite the Constitution, we need to reread the Constitution? Is there one moment in here that's really stuck with Kelsey Grammer?
The one moment really is the understanding that they were prepared. That to me is for me educationally, that was the birthplace of the Second Amendment. That became, it was an organic necessity to understand that you needed to be able to stand up against the government that was not being fair to you. And that to me, it's a foundational belief. It is maybe just American. I don't know. You know, countries all over the world abandon their right to gun ownership all the time. I see it as a duty to actually be able to say no to an overreaching government, to say we will not do that. And some of that depends upon the fact your ability to defend yourself. Illegal search and seizure comes along for the ride. I guess that's Fourth Amendment, but the value of it and their preparedness. I mean, and then of course, when they got up in the morning, when somebody rode through and said the British are coming, that somebody decided they'd get musket and ball and walk out in the middle of a field and say, stop. That's breathtaking heroism, you know. Said, no, you will not do this. That's my love for them is still alive. You know, I mean, I weep at the bravery of that.
All right. Finally, Kelsey, you've done, as you mentioned, several series and stories on American history, to your point. And if we and I together agree as well, but there's still such fertile ground to tell stories. And when I say tell stories, for me, I think it's so fascinating to think about it in a variety of ways. If people have trouble with narrative arcs and narrative history, meaning not just documentary, with costumes and period pieces, well, then make it modern day. You know, teach me the same lessons and show me the same characters in modern day. But what would you do next, Kelsey? Like, if you focused next on the next part of the American history that fascinates you and you haven't yet told, what would that be?
Right. Well, there's a whole bunch of them, of course. I mean, some of them I'd love to do some of the World War II stuff, but the Pacific Theater, especially because that's where my grandfather was. I mean, I have a personal connection to that, and the fact that, you know, so much carnage and bravery existed in that engagement, and some of the stories I know. I'd love to see the Battle of the Coral Sea done, one of the first American battles that we actually sort of turned the tide a little bit. I think it was sort of a draw, really, but it came out as the first time it looked like America could actually fight for itself in the South Pacific. I'd love to sort of interweave the idea of what the Panama Canal is. Why, you know, a lot of people are still going like, why does he care about the Panama Canal? Well, Stephen Ambrose basically said, without the Panama Canal, we wouldn't have won World War II. And if people could understand that, then they'd understand why is it so important to China? Why was it so important that they come in and take over there? It is a gateway to our independence. It remains that in terms of on the international stage. It remains that, and of course we should do it, you know, with dignity. But maybe giving it up in the first place was probably a mistake.
What a fascinating story that would be.
Yeah, I think we could definitely do that. Yeah. So there's more. The story, and I know that the guys at Fox Nation and we've talked several times. I know there's more to do. We're going to do some more, and we're going to throw another one together and, you know, see how it works. I'd love to do also the battle for Baltimore, you know, the War of 1812, the Star Spangled Banner inspiration, because that's an amazing tale, and I don't think people understand why we sing it and why it was written. Francis Scott Key was just a doctor who had been sort of tapped to negotiate a prisoner swap. So he went out to the British ships that were there and arranged for this swap of 400 prisoners of war, basically. But the British commander at the time said, why don't you just spend the night tonight? Because come morning, that flag sitting over Fort McKinley won't be there. And he pointed at all the ships behind him. There were hundreds of ships on the horizon. And he said, we're going to bombard that place till that thing falls. And Francis Scott Key wrote through the night, "Is it still there?" And it was there because the men in Fort McKinley were holding it up. Whenever it would fight, whenever it would start to fall, some man would either sacrifice his life or sacrifice his entire body to keep it standing. And that understanding of what our flag means, I don't believe anybody would burn our flag again.
Wow. I am taken aback not just by your understanding of American history, but your emotional connection to it. It's touching. And it certainly inadvertently, but serves as a selling point for making sure we all invest, at the very least, in checking out Blood on the Bridge, the Battle of Lexington and Concord. I would love to talk to you more, Kelsey. I would love to have you on the Will Cain Show as well at 4 o'clock to talk about some of this deep understanding of history. I'm fascinated by tying in the history of the Panama Canal to even the current modern day debates. And you seem obviously a very, very eloquent voice for all of us to understand these issues. So you have an open invitation, and you'll probably get an invitation to come on the Will Cain Show.
Okay, great, man. I appreciate it.
Okay, Kelsey Grammer, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Well, good to see you, man. Thank you.
Check out Battle on the Bridge, Lexington and Concord. You can hear the emotion in Kelsey Grammer's voice talking about American history. It's absolutely incredible. Make sure you check that out at Fox Nation. That's going to do it for us today. Thank you for hanging out with us on the Will Cain Show. We'll see you again tomorrow. Same time, same place, next time.